So last week I'm at a networking event here in the city, and I'm going to try to set this up for you a little bit. But essentially, I go to a networking event. It's a round table uh, of a bunch of people who are in the AI space and doing implementations, and different level executives, C-suite executives, along with different presidential level, vice presidents, that level of decision maker within organizations. So I believe it was put together by Startup Grind. I'll have to check my notes on that. But I go to the event and it's really cool. We walk in, and the way they got it set it up is the presenter, he's got his slides, and he had us read a presentation, or not really a presentation, but he had us read a report before we came to the event. So you're supposed to come and be prepared and ready to talk about AI implementation from different perspectives inside of an organization. So when I get there, and you walk into the event and you say hello, you introduce yourself, and I get to talking to this one individual, and he starts telling me a little bit about what he's doing. So he's got a consultancy that he started up about a year ago. He left his job in banking and wanted to get into more of the startup side of things, and he thought that the best way possible for him was to have this consultancy. So he's basically working as a fractional COO, if you will. And of course I ask him, are you using AI in your business? Have you implemented AI in your consultancy? First thing he says to me is, no, I don't trust it. I said, oh, okay, interesting. Tell me more. So we get to chatting a little bit more, and he starts telling me that, the nature of his business is that dealing with a lot of startups, he has noticed that when they go to raise their first round, or when they go to raise their next round, they're often not tidy on the back end in terms of their compliance, in terms of keeping track of their contracts, if they even have contracts in place with their different vendors, with their clients. Insurance policies, is everything up to date in terms of what coverages that they need, and accounting too, which is like a big one for a lot of people, but not having their accounting up to date. It turns out these things are kind of tedious, and if you're not the type of person that gets into that, you're usually not the type of person that goes and does a startup. Startup founders, startup teams are really focused on product, really focused on go-to-market, and these things in the back end is where he comes in. So that's awesome. Long story short, I said, so why aren't you using AI? Well, he says to me that, I don't trust it because it's how do I know it's going to do what I need it to do? And I said, that's a great question. Let me ask you a couple more questions if you don't mind. He said, yeah, sure. So I asked him, how exactly do you go about doing your job? Well, I do this and then I do that, and it's a lot of auditing, and it's a lot of tedious going through paperwork and collecting files and so on and so forth, and then I have to make sure that everything follows a very specific process. All right, cool. So you have a specific process, and to you, that process is kind of intuitive, isn't it? I said, yeah, it's super intuitive to me. I've been doing this for years. Right, exactly. So have you ever taken the time to actually write that process down, or have you ever sat with somebody to extract that process from you? I said, no, I haven't. I said, all right, well, that process is exactly what the general AI chats don't have. And that's exactly the step-by-step thing that makes AI really good at stuff. You need to have that process documented, and if you don't have it documented, maybe you have a hard time writing your stuff down or whatever, we've all been there, you're in the weeds of doing your job, then you need to work with somebody who can help you document it. Because that step-by-step process is exactly what an AI needs to be trained on in order to do things exactly the same way. See, here's the thing. Most people are using AI, right? And they're using ChatGPT, they're using Claude, right? They're using Gemini. They're familiar with these chat windows, but what they're not realizing is that these are general functioning AIs, right? So they're really good at doing general stuff. But when you need something to be very specific and it has high risk associated with it, you need to follow a very specific workflow that needs to be documented, because if it's not documented, then the AI can't follow instructions. AI is really good at following instructions, but if you don't have the instructions, then it's no bueno for you. Long story short, I'm walking him through the same thing that I'm talking about right now, and he has that moment. He said, "I never thought about that." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Is that what you do?" I said, "That is part of what I do. Yeah, I help individuals who are either consultants like yourself or businesses put together step-by-step processes, and then I build systems around it so that you have an agent that's really good at doing one specific task." And that's what he said. And that's when he said to me, "Dude, we should talk." Anyways, if this sounds like something that maybe is a light bulb moment for you, or maybe you haven't had that insight yet, or maybe you have and you just haven't had the time, or you haven't met the right person, the link is down below. You can schedule a consultation with me. We'll do a quick consultation, see if we're a right fit for one another, and see how I can help you. It's completely free, and I'll help you get everything documented, put it into the right technical documentation that it needs to be in, and if it's also something that makes sense, we can take it a step further and we can start building an agentic system for you. So if you like this kind of content and you want to hear more, I've got more stories like this of people that I've been talking to, people that I've been working with, where I'm starting to hear a lot of the same thing across the board. And so I figured let's start putting it out here on YouTube. If you like this kind of content, like, subscribe, share, click on the link below, set up a call with me, and I'm really interested in hearing about what you got going on in your consultancy, your agency, or your business.